All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lunch and Learn today. I am Jeremy. I will be your host for the day. So, if we have any questions, I don't believe we saw any pre-submitted questions. So, if we have any questions, please go ahead and ask them in the chat or Q&A, and I will be happy to help. So, yeah, for now, go ahead and ask some questions. I'll give you guys all a minute for those that are joining to either join up or ask, type up some questions, and then we can get started here in a moment. All right. I do have one question in the chat for now, so we can go ahead and start with that one, and then move forward. And if we get any other questions, so I'll get to that in just a second. Just a quick reminder, check out our YouTube channel. We post our lunch and learns every day, as well as additional content, additional unique things, great things up there. Whenever we have some good ideas, or if you have ideas for steps or concepts that we can talk about that you haven't seen in our training programs or anywhere else that you think we could talk about it, feel free to let us know, and we'd also be happy to, add that to potential options to add on our YouTube channel. We can also always check out the solutions marketplace. We always point that out every week, every lunch and learn or most lunch and learns. So definitely check that out if you're curious. There may be some interesting applications that may be useful to you. So definitely feel free to check those things out. All right, now let me switch over to actual decisions, and we can take a look and start answering some questions. So it looks like Kiki has a question that we will start with. First one that I saw come in. Can I convert a string input to a decimal condition in a rule table? What would be the case if the string is not a number? Good question. Let's go ahead and open this up and check it out. And I will give you also the ability to talk in case you wanted to add anything else or add context, or direct me if there's anything specific you wanted to
Yeah,
add to
so
this.
currently I have a root table and I want to like add a converter for the input.
You're talking about for like this input up here?
Yeah, so I want to input a string, but the string should be converted to a number, and then in the conditions we'll check like equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.
Got it.
We
So
got
you
a
want
string
so you
input.
want this to be checking things related to numbers, but
Yes, the input will
you're
be
expecting
string.
your data to come in as a string.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's actually you can easily do this um by just having the input be a decimal. Um because when you take this rule table and place it in a flow, you actually can easily just do converters on the inputs of those. What I was doing in this. We're gonna clear that out.
But is there a way to do it in the root table side? Because what if I have like maybe I have 5 root tables and some of them will be strings, some of them will be numbers, and I want to kind of group them in one flow. So that's why
Hmm.
I just try to make the input consistent that all of the input will be strings, but depends on the use case like depends on the condition it is checking. It can be convert into string or numbers.
Got it. I see.
So yeah, so
That.
previously I learned from the lunch and learn session that I can make use of a truth table of different root table IDs, and I can kind of,
Hmm.
yeah, kind of have different branches. Like, so yeah, so depending on the root table ID, then I would select the corresponding root table, and then
Right.
it will take in the string input and go through those conditions. But some of them are just decimal, but some of them are strings.
Hmm. I Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think you can have something act as like a dual decimal and string at the same time. The main reason being the like rules and things that you can add, the what was the word? The verbs that you get to choose from here are different depending on the data type, right? So like if I have one being this decimal and then another being a string, right? The decimals rules are going to have these number rules specific to them, right? That only have numbers, decimals, whatever. Strings are going to have none of the number rules. They're going to all have text rules. So decimals don't have text rules, strings don't have number rules, meaning
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
I
quite like
understand that.
have it easily grab both of them. So in that case, I would think you would need to, before the rule table, distinguish between them.
But when
Um,
you click on the top, the header row, no, like the
this?
um,
Oh, up here, you mean?
yeah, when you click on the variable name, and then there's like a run flow to get data on the right hand side. This one, can this do the converting? Like if I'm expecting a string that can be parsed as a number.
Um, I did actually create one at some point. So yeah, you can have it, right. You can have some kind of flow that you created of some kind of converter, right? If you have a converter flow, this is like completely configurable like converter. So I mean it's worth messing with to see because I guess within here you could have um like some kind of a rule or something to check the input data and check and see if it can be like parses the decimal, and if it can't, then if it is, convert it to a decimal. If it's not, keep it as a string. So I guess you could maybe do it that way.
Yep, yeah, I
Uh,
think I play with this. Yeah, I tried with this. So the other question I have is what if I parse, like, I think you convert it into a number by using parse decimal or parse number, something like that, the step.
mhm.
And I'm not sure so what if the user input doesn't input a number, like what will happen? I think currently it gives me like it kind of breaks, but I don't know how to capture that exception if it's not a number.
Let's see here. Don't have that checked. Okay, so something like this, right? Well, it takes in the string and does like what you mentioned. There's that checkbox here, right? That converts a null value to zero. If it doesn't recognize it as a number, then it's going to treat it as a null value or kind of like an errored value, right? If I don't have this checked, it throws an error, right? And obviously that'll stop your process. So you want to consider that. If it throws something that can't actually, parse it as a number, could not convert cat to a number, right? Because that was the string that I put in. So it'll throw that error. So you could do something with this and add an outcome on the exceptions. And so if it does
Oh,
have an
okay.
exception, all of our steps have this ability to add on exception path on the bottom. So it's on every step. If you scroll down, there's this outcomes section. It's always collapsed. You expand it, there's a thing that you can add an outcome for exception. This is if you're expecting certain exceptions and you want to do something with them, something like that. So then if I run it, it's going to fail because that thing that I typed in there isn't a number. So it'll go down this path. So then I can, change what I want to do with it from that pathway. Um, or same on this, right? If it is a number, then obviously it'll just successfully parse that number, right? And output your decimal going down the correct pathway. So I do have two paths here. You could do it as a converter. You could also, if you wanted to do this just as a step right before your rule table, if you wanted to just create two possible outcomes, that could go into it as well. That's just another option. But yeah, you could do it as the converter here. So that's an option. Um,
Yep.
There's
So
other
yes,
ways too. You could
another.
probably do rules to beforehand to send to pathways. But yeah, I think that this is something.
Okay, so if I want to use it as a converter, and if I pass it in a string, it gives an exception, and what would happen in the root table side?
So then at this point, it just depends on like what you're um, outputting from this converter. And so at that point, I don't know exactly what the goal is to output here, but right, if you're making a converter, you need to output, right, um, one particular thing. In this case, it can only output one value.
Yep, so it will expect to output a decimal, but then if there's an exception, there's no way to kind
Yeah.
of capture that if I use it as a converter.
Yeah, no, even in a converter, you can only output one thing, so I can't output a decimal and a string. I can't
So
output two
I
different
can
values like that.
either maybe output -1 to like maybe show that it's not a number, or else I have to do it in another flow but not in a converter.
Yeah. Um, yeah, like that, yeah, I guess that's the biggest thing, right? Is to do this, to do a converter flow, it'll like it says it up here, I can only output a single value, right? So that value still has to be one data type of something. Meaning you're going to have to lose the string in order to keep it this way. And so if you need that exact string to be used, you'd have to use that like separately, or you need the string verbs or something like that. Yeah, that's going to kind of make it a little bit trickier uh, to consider things if you're doing that. Um,
Okay. Yep, I get the idea. You're such so you suggest me to use parse number in a flow before I run the root table, is it?
yeah, because if you use it before the rule table, then you can create
Then
two
I can
separate
just have
inputs on
another
it,
branch. Yeah.
right? And then you don't have to worry about the limitations of setting up a converter on like within this, because then that converter you're kind of stuck with only one output. If you do that parse number trick before the rule table, then you can take whatever that output is, and now it'll have two different pathways with two different like results or whatever that could change the way that what you're looking at and allow
Okay.
you to do like two different things with it.
Yep. Okay, I will think about that. Thank you.
Yep. And then I think, and just in general, the other obvious answer too that you could consider is just making two different rule tables, one for if that result is a decimal and a different one for if the result is a string. Um, that's just like another one, but obviously that would require making multiple rule tables. So if you want it to all be one to consolidate it or whatever, you have to consider that.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Mhm. And then I do have one more little point to add. VT did post this in the chat. Um, related to the question as well. He said you can probably create a rule extension flow that will act as a verb in the rule designer, and then you can input the object, and then in your flow try to cast that object or check the object's type. Um,
Um, can you repeat?
yes, yes. I can actually just resend this so that everyone can see it. Then you can at least you can read it as well. Um, but yeah, so you can if you create a rule extension flow, um, so there's a lot of different like flow behaviors and things that you can create in decisions. And so you can consider like using those kinds of things. But basically, I think there we go, a rule extension. So you can like create rule extensions to create custom rule verbs that you can use in the rule. So this obviously it's custom, so you have to think about building it yourself. So if you want to utilize like a rule extension of some kind, you can use this to and it'll make verbs appear. So then you'll have additional verbs to use in your rule table. Um, and then you'd have to kind of, I've never actually used one of these. I don't know this like deep specifics, but I mean, it's just kind of like you can kind of utilize, expected input data and then check the information. So you could probably use, um, decisions objects and stuff to uh, check what the rule type is potentially, and things like that. So object is like the base thing that everything can be considered, but their objects are a little bit trickier because you don't have verbs that come with them. But if you create your own rule extension to create your own verb, you could maybe utilize that. Um, if I think the stuff that we talked about is like the simpler example. If that if you think that what we've talked about previously is useful, you can try that first. And if not, then maybe start investigating rule extensions, check documentation, stuff like that. This may also be useful if a useful thing to look into.
Okay. How do you check the object type in the rule extension flow?
Well, so anything that's like certain types, right? So you always have like your decisions types. Object is just like a base, um, like anything is considered an object. But because of that, and whenever you create something that's an object, the verbs that you have is like a little different because the object could be anything. Um, so because of that, you may be able to kind of mess with some of these and see the options. Um, but it's less about throwing in like if I just throw an equals right a number rule specific to this, it's still expecting this object to be a number, and it'll error out if not. But you might be able
Okay.
to utilize this to check what the object's type is, or if maybe mess around and see if this kind of like rule can do that for you. And if it can, then you might even be able to just use this to as and use a verb that you create with this rule extension to check that for you and then
Okay.
change your
I
results
get
based
your
on it.
idea. Okay, I will have a look at it first and see if I can get a solution. Thank you.
Hmm. Okay. And VT also has a question for us here. So I will give you the opportunity to speak so you can expand on what you're looking for here, just so that we can talk more. But I think I have a good idea of what you're looking for. So we want to know how we can change the form data from a subdialog. Like if there's a checkbox list in your subdialog and I want those selections to remain if a user calls that subdialog again. New additional form. Okay, let's make this static lists. Bunch of letters. We'll just do that. Okay. So I think my initial thought here, and we'll do some testing to see if it works. I know I've seen some people try to do this before, especially on some of our old training projects that had subdialogues. Uh, we didn't require, I know we did not require that you have a way to do this, but some people tried to figure it out anyway. Basically, right, you want this, the inputs on this to come from something. And that something has to be able to, hold the information, in this case, that list of strings to keep track of whatever got sent from here. So, that this will output the results, but we need to actually do something with that output to hold the data, and then we need to be able to take that data and send it back into this form from the beginning. And I don't know for sure if this works, but this is what I think I've seen from it. I know, right, you can pull from anything from the original form. And so if that original form has something that can hold that data, then that might be able to work. My thought here being,
But it's not a control on the original, right?
sorry, say that again.
It's not a control on the original form.
I know that's one way that I've seen people do it. I don't, obviously that might not be the best way because
Create
you might
data and
not
hide
want
it.
to add that. Right.
I know that you can do it in legacy if you check that use legacy, and on legacy you have change data or just close subdialog. And if you change data, and then you can have like a form input data, which will
mhm.
be empty at the beginning, and if you name it the same as subdialog output and you use change data, it will change form data. So it was doable on legacy. I'm not sure,
Got it.
like,
Have you
is
have
it
you have
do?
you tried doing that same thing and without using legacy?
Yes, well, the problem is that the name uh, of the output will be different because the name on the original form is, let's say, new menu, right? And that's a list of strings.
Right.
The name on the subdialog will become form data dot new menu.
Oh, I see what you mean. Because it's nested, so it forces that first part. Hmm.
And if you try to output just new menu, it doesn't change on the form data.
Right.
So it looks like there is a step missing in form rules here. In the toolbox in form rules, you can get value. Get form data value, but there is no set form data value or change.
Hmm. But you could change the form data value just on an output, right? If I just go to change this output, I can change any piece of data in the form data.
Will it work?
Let me go back to my form and actually do something though. I don't have anything in here. Like for example, if I have like a checkbox list in here.
No, don't have it as a control. Have it as a set of input data.
Oh, you mean like this?
Yeah.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Right. So if I have a list of strings as input here, you're talking about that. Oops, I don't need to do that. And if I go back in here, I can change if I change value of my checkboxes list input here, and then have this come from that. Grab my form with sub example. Obviously, we don't have anything for that initially. So I get my form, I get my checkboxes, and then if I open it up again, looks like it actually does keep it.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
And then if I make any changes, yeah, it doesn't matter. Seems like it'll work.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. All right. Well, do we have any other questions? I guess it's just VT in here now.
We just upgraded to V9, and I
Mhm.
do have like a legacy projects. What's the main concern if I convert from legacy to V9 project?
I don't think there's any like as long as you're like I think the biggest thing is just making sure that everything that you have is in your project. Um, it doesn't really do anything other than moves everything into it. I think the only thing that maybe like could be like a little I think questionable is I'm not sure there's a lot of like certain like elements that used to only be in system that are now in projects. And I don't think those just automatically slide in. Some of them do, and I think a majority of them do. I don't know if I
Yeah,
have a
my
good
biggest concern
example.
was if I have like lookup list and constants, and also stuff like name session.
Yeah, so I do know like nothing changed about those being in here, right? Like I still have my name sessions and stuff like that. I don't have any because this is a nearly fresh install. Um, but like if I had named sessions, they should still be in system name sessions. So like nothing necessarily gets removed in that way. Any like connections or like REST services and things that you have, all that kind of stuff should still be in system. You can double check that just to confirm.
Yeah, it's
Um,
all there.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so
the-
if I know that I'm not 100% sure on everything that it gets converted, but it might not just directly move into the project automatically. You so but if it's still accessible in service in the like system, you still should be able to have access to it, overall. It might not just automatically slide into your actual like project itself right away. Um, but like we still have the ability to add dependencies to things like that. Uh, and some of them you might even just be able to move. I believe um, like REST services still will go into it. So I think I had one that I tested with that before. Actually, yeah,
So
unfortunately, I don't have one
if
off
I
the
would
top of my head that has it.
if I would deploy it to, let's say, production from V8 to V9 and then make a deployment, the global system level versus the project level name sessions and those constants, what do I have to do? Do I
Say
need
that one
to
more time.
move?
Sorry.
So they remain in the like you said, a global system, but also you have like constants on the project level.
Mhm.
If I would deploy, if I do not convert, let's say from legacy, or no, cancel that. If I convert that from legacy to V9 project and I would like to deploy it to production, and my constants are on a global level, do I need to move them to project level?
I don't think so. As far as I'm aware, um, um, hang on. Actually, maybe this might help. Thank you, Gregory. I was just about to actually look for that and pull that up too.
Sure
Um,
thing.
uh, this is I think the biggest one. Um, or the biggest thing that may be useful here. So a majority of the stuff isn't going to matter. I think some of the things that you're saying, we do like talk about down here. If there's no system defaults for many things, so because they're configured at the project level. So if you do plan on using a lot of these things, um, we do actually have it in our documentation. We suggest making a separate project that is meant to hold those like system defaults and things, and like those kinds of items. So it'd be best to move them, but you can make like a project that's dedicated to all of those, and then just make sure that project is set as a dependency on any projects that need them. Especially if you have like multiple different things that are going to use them. Uh, but I think we do recommend pushing everything into a project. The biggest thing is for deployment, you can't deploy legacy projects. Like if I had uh like these are a couple projects from version 8 that I haven't actually changed to version 9 projects yet. Like if I had designer repository things, I don't think I can actually check these in. Um, might have to log in. Right, like you can't actually deploy it until it's in a project hub like this. So you'd need to convert it to a project to be able to deploy and everything now, with the version 9 kind of like upgrade and everything. So because of that, you would want to move anything like those into their own projects to do it.
Okay.
There are two additional things I wish to add to that. One, if you have any circular dependencies, it's not going to let you convert it to a project in the first place. So you have to make sure all those are sorted out in V8 so you don't have one project depending on another project. You don't have project A depends on project B depends on project C, but then project C depends on project A. Like you can't have that. Another thing, not many people use this, but there is a functionality in V8 called a subproject. You cannot convert sub-projects into full-on projects. There's no concept of a sub-project in V9. So V9 will handle the conversion by separating them out as two different projects with a weird naming convention. So you would want to make sure everything that's in a sub-project, if you have any in V8, is moved to its own separate project.
Okay. If I have two projects depending on one item and we are in V9, can I resolve that in V9 before I convert that into V9 project?
I don't believe you'd be able to. Like, if you have projects depending on each other, it won't let you convert it in V9. Like, it just simply won't let you convert that legacy project into a V9 project if they have circular dependencies.
Right, but if I remove that dependency from a project and create like a new project saying this is shareable, would that resolve my issue?
That should. Yes.
Yes.
If you, yeah, you should be able to, if you can remove the circular dependency, you should be able to convert it. I can, uh, definitely something worth, I can try and confirm that as well with our support team, but that should be fine.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Oh, and to answer your question about yesterday with the get page variables, I talked with our devs, and that get cookie functionality is looking like something that they actually want to remove. So don't
Oh,
worry about trying to use that.
okay, thanks.
Sure thing.
For the SSO login, so I'm not sure if that's a decisions question, but I think if somehow application A will be able to push those things into assertion consumption object, you will be able to pull those, but I'm not sure how to push those variables into assertion consumption object.
I feel like those variables are, I feel like the assertion is pushed
It,
in either in the portal settings or in the data that's in the login flow from the SSO provider. But let me confirm that.
well, I'm saying it's not decisions question because what happens when you authenticate, your data goes to Okta, you authenticate from Okta, and then Okta sends data into assertion consumer in decisions.
Right.
And on login, if you have like on login Okta flow, you can get those values from that assertion object.
Right, you should be able to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe another question. If I have a link that goes to some place or tries to run a flow, but I need to authenticate through Okta, after authentication, do you know if I'm gonna end up in my default inbox folder, or am I gonna redirect to the thing? So for example, like if you go to decisions login page, login ASPX, and then if you say redirect or redirect URL, I forgot how it calls. So if you like if you have a parameter redirect and you log in, you will not end up in your like inbox default. You will be redirected to decisions place.
Gregor, do you know that? I don't know anything about.
Like if you log out from here and return URL, I guess if you say in that return URL, if you put like a decisions location different that you have right now, that should redirect you to that place. But the question is if I'm coming from Okta authentication will that same work.
I'm not certain. So you're talking about a user that's already, you're trying to redirect them back to the page that they were leaving in decisions, or just on the login redirect them to a particular page or folder?
Now the problem is that we have application A that will, let's say, have some parameters in URL, and it will look like go to decisions, and then in parameters will be department ID, blah blah blah, department name, and depending on that, well, in most cases it should work fine because application A has the same Okta integration authentication as decisions, so that should be seamless. If, for example, in edge case, they are on the page in application A, then they go for lunch, they come back, they lose Okta session, they click that button, Okta says, oh, you're not authenticated, now you need to go through Okta authentication. Now that's a problem for decisions to find out where they intended to go.
I see what you're saying. Okay. So like if a user session times out or something, they've been logged out, but they left there, so they re-authenticate through Okta. You want to make sure that they're redirected back to the same page that they had navigated to within their previous session.
Yep.
Gotcha. Ooh.
Well, there could be a solution that, for example, on decisions, we can have like a default page. Now the problem is to find out how to identify where they coming from. I've done something like with Okta. Let's say you are an admin, so I can call Okta API, call your groups, and defining that, I would say, if you're an admin of department A, you can go there. But the issue was, what if you an admin for department A and B? So I have no clue where they
Which
need
one
to
you're
go.
supposed to
Yeah.
direct to? I see. Hmm. So my mind goes in a few different areas with this question here, and I don't have an immediate solution, but I've got some ideas, if that makes sense. So the first one is that you can import Okta groups into decisions based upon whatever groups are allowed to authenticate. So if you determine what their access is in Okta, they don't have to be all in the same Okta authentication group. And whatever group they're coming in from there, they also get directed to in decisions, which each has their own home page. So you don't even have to configure it too much in decisions. You just have to determine what those automatically created groups' home pages are. As for being directed, if you're in two groups, I think I need to test that because that's not an Okta thing. That's if you've got a user that's part of two groups and each group has a different home dashboard, which dashboard are you directed to? That's separate from Okta. That's a different kind of question that would be very easy to test, but I do need to figure out what logic is behind that as far as the default login for if you're part of multiple groups, how does decisions determine which home page you're landing on? And if so, can that be changed? Hmm. Yeah, that's a
Right. Another part, I'm not sure if you heard about that, but in Okta, you can basically have one application, let's say decisions. But for different groups, I do believe that you can have something like relay state. And in decisions, in that login flow, you can get that relay state, which will point to right direction. The problem is that on login flow cannot redirect you. So you will have to do some like hack away, saying you have a dashboard like default one, and then put that relay state somewhere, let's say in cache. Then on that default page, get that data from cache, and by that state, redirect them from there.
I was gonna say all you'd have to do is not necessarily stored in cache. You can just say that if this is the group that the user is a part of, create this user or add this user to this group in decisions, and it will follow the logic of that group's homepage. So you don't even have to store it in cache.
Right, but how do you redirect? If you, let's say you're in group A and B, you're
Hmm.
coming from, let's say, as an admin of A, we put that into real estate. So you coming from real estate will say you're from group A. Now on login, if I check in decisions, decisions will tell me that you're in A and B. Now, how would I know? How would decisions know if on the group level in decisions I say for group A this is the homepage, for B it's different one.
I get what you're saying now. It's not necessarily a group thing. You're talking about what page they're coming from in a different application to
Yep.
determine where they go in decisions. I see. Okay. That is a little different. Sounds like deep linking. Is that what that is? Yeah, that sounds like deep linking is what you're talking about. And there is a way to do that in decisions beyond version like 8.13. Like I think it was broken in 8.13 or something like that, but then after that it got fixed. So that should be doable. This sounds very doable. Yeah, what you're talking about is deep linking, the idea that, based upon where a user's coming from or what link URLs or group information or whatever they're coming from is going to determine where they're going decisions. There is a way to do that. I do need to look into that. I know there's a way to do that. That exists in our platform and we made sure we fixed it to make sure that it works. Because we ran into a problem with another customer that was on an older version and we recommended them deep linking, but they had to upgrade first in order to make sure they could do it.
Can you explain me more about that deep linking?
Deep linking. So it's the premise that you are trying, like in its most basic terms, you are not redirecting a user to a homepage or dashboard. Rather, you are sending them to a particular area within the default website or within the decisions application or any application for that matter, based upon those parameters that are coming in. So it's exactly what you're talking about, where you don't want to send them all to the same dashboard just because they're part of a group. You want to be able to capture how they're coming in to determine where they're going.
Right, but
I'm trying to figure out how to
uh,
do that in decisions. That I do need to figure out, and
no,
that's
that's not hard if they have like active Okta session. The the biggest issue when they need to go through Okta authentication, then original link parameters are lost.
right because Okta's not sending it back. How can we do this?
And again, we can put something into relay state in Okta, or somehow in that assertion object.
Right, but then
But yeah, then we'll not be able to redirect them in on login Okta flow. We'll need to go to like a default page, then save that relay state somewhere, either in database or cache, and then redirect them. And cache should be unique too, because if we have like simultaneous logins, they can be misdirected because of that cache. So
I
that
wonder if
cache,
So
uh,
along the same lines of what you're talking about, maybe that get page variable step could be used to get information from that URL that you're passing in, if there's any way to alter that to allow for like real estate or whatever it might be, and have that trigger a run flow part that then sends the user to a different folder or page.
yeah, but that page variable Well, if that cookie works, then we can use that. But you say that
It's
you'll
getting removed. Yeah, it's not working. It's getting removed. I wouldn't count on the cookie aspect of it. You do have cache steps though. You can pull from cache. You can
Yeah, I
get
know.
specific, yeah, particular caches. So we would, so the idea is you'd get it from cache. You'd have that run into like a, not a flow run part. I think it's just flow run part. It's one of those two page controls that would run automatically when the user lands on the page, gets the information, and then passes the user to a dynamically determined dashboard based upon that information.
Hmm.
Okay.
Or if we want to put something into cookies, I can just use JavaScript control to pull that on default page to pull that from cookies and then redirect them.
Yeah. And then, yeah, just pass that into a flow run part. You could even have that default landing page just look like a loading screen. Like it doesn't have to contain any information. It'll just
Mm-hmm.
redirect from there.
Yep. Yeah, I can do that.
That sounds like the play for this. That sounds like how you got to handle it. And
Yeah.
let me uh Jeremy, can you go to a page real quick and see if it's the flow run part or the flow run at there are two with extremely similar
It's
names.
a flow run part where you can show like form.
That's it. Yep. The one that just runs automatically, not the one that's triggered by a user
Mm-hmm.
event. Yeah, flow
Yeah.
run part. Okay. Yeah, that's the one. So
Yeah,
that
that
would
one.
run in the background. You can even make it invisible. You have the loading screen here, and then it'll get it from cache or fetch cookie with a JavaScript control. And then in that flow, it'll redirect the user with an endform session step with a navigate or open URL parameter that then sends the user to the correct page.
Yep.
Yep, that's it. That's the way we got to do it.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, we're pretty much at our time anyway. So thanks for all the questions and for attending today. We've still got a couple others this week, Gregory and Robert. And we will see you all next time. Have a good one, everybody.